Elvis visited 16-year-old leukemia patient Jessica at the hospital after his concert. The girl wanted one last dance with him before she died. Elvis stayed by her side for 3 hours, singing to her, and the next morning, Jessica passed away peacefully. The nurses speak of Elvis's magical healing presence that night. It was November 8, 1976, at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee. And what happened in room 314 that night would become one of the most profound and heartbreaking moments in Elvis Presley's life. The evening had started like many others. Elvis had just finished a spectacular concert at the Mid-South Coliseum, energizing 18,000 fans with 2 hours of his greatest hits. But as he was preparing to leave the venue, his road manager Joe Esposito approached him with an unusual and urgent request. A message had come through official channels from St. Jude Hospital, just 20 minutes away from the concert venue. The hospital's chief of pediatric oncology, Dr. Margaret Chen, had reached out through a mutual contact, explaining that they had a 16-year-old patient named Jessica Marie Thompson, who was in her final stages of acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Jessica had been fighting the disease for 3 years, enduring countless rounds of chemotherapy, radiation treatments, and experimental therapies. But her condition had deteriorated rapidly over the past week. What made this particular request so urgent and heartbreaking was that Jessica's doctors had informed her family that she likely had less than 48 hours to live. Her white blood cell count had dropped to critically low levels, her organs were beginning to shut down, and she had stopped responding to all medical interventions. In what her medical team knew were probably her final conscious hours, Jessica had expressed one last wish that seemed impossible to fulfill. She wanted to dance with Elvis Presley. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story of compassion that would test the limits of what one person could do for another, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. What you're about to witness is a moment that revealed the true heart of the king of rock and roll. Jessica had been an Elvis fan since childhood, long before her cancer diagnosis at age 13. Her bedroom walls were covered with Elvis posters, her record collection contained every album he had ever released, and she had dreamed of attending one of his concerts since she first heard Hound Dog on the radio when she was 8 years old. When she was first diagnosed with leukemia, Jessica had told her parents that her biggest goal was to survive long enough to see Elvis perform live. She had fought through 3 years of brutal treatments, with that dream sustaining her through the darkest moments. 2 months earlier, when Jessica's condition had briefly stabilized, her parents had managed to purchase tickets to Elvis's November concert. The family had been planning this evening for weeks, seeing it as both a celebration of Jessica's courage and possibly their last opportunity to create a beautiful memory together. However, just days before the concert, Jessica's health had taken a dramatic turn for the worse, making it impossible for her to leave the hospital. The request that reached Elvis through Dr. Chen was not just from Jessica's medical team, but from a teenage girl who had shown extraordinary bravery in the face of terminal illness and who had never asked for anything beyond the chance to hear her hero sing. The message explained Jessica's condition, her love for Elvis's music, and her simple wish to meet him if it were somehow possible. What made the request even more poignant was that Jessica wasn't asking to attend a concert or receive special treatment. She just wanted a few minutes with Elvis, perhaps to hear him sing one song before she lost her final battle with cancer. Elvis's immediate response surprised even those who knew him best. Without hesitation, he told Joe Esposito to contact the hospital and arrange for him to visit Jessica that very night, regardless of how late it might be or what security arrangements would be needed. He was still wearing his white jumpsuit from the concert, still energized from performing, but he understood that this 16-year-old girl didn't have time to wait for a more convenient moment. When Elvis arrived at St. Jude Hospital at nearly midnight, still in his concert attire, the night shift staff could hardly believe what they were seeing. The king of rock and roll was walking through their pediatric oncology ward, asking to visit a patient who was dying. Security had been quietly arranged to minimize disruption to other patients, but word spread quickly among the nurses and doctors on duty that something extraordinary was happening in room 314. Jessica's parents, David and Margaret Thompson, had been maintaining a bedside vigil for the past 3 days, watching their daughter's condition deteriorate while trying to maintain hope for a miracle that medical science said was impossible. When Dr. Chen informed them that Elvis Presley had personally responded to their daughter's wish and was coming to visit her that very night, they were overwhelmed with gratitude and disbelief. Margaret Thompson later described the moment when Elvis walked into Jessica's room as one of the most surreal and beautiful experiences of her life. Jessica was awake, but very weak, connected to multiple monitoring devices and receiving morphine for pain management. Her once thick brown hair had been lost to chemotherapy months earlier, but she was wearing a colorful scarf that her grandmother had made for her, along with Elvis Presley earrings that had been a gift from her best friend. Elvis's approach to Jessica was gentle and intuitive, demonstrating an understanding of how to interact with someone who was seriously ill that surprised the medical staff present. Rather than overwhelming her with energy or enthusiasm, he spoke softly and moved slowly, allowing Jessica to set the pace for their interaction. He complimented her earrings, admired the Elvis posters that covered her hospital room walls, and asked about her favorite songs from his catalog. The conversation between Elvis and Jessica revealed a depth of connection that went beyond typical fan interactions. Jessica spoke about how Elvis's music had helped her through the most difficult moments of her cancer treatment, explaining that listening to "It's Now or Never" had given her strength during chemotherapy sessions, and that "Can't Help Falling in Love" had become her favorite song because it reminded her that love was stronger than fear. Elvis listened to Jessica's stories with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions about her treatment, her family, and her hopes for whatever time she had remaining. He seemed to understand instinctively that this wasn't a moment for entertainment or distraction, but rather an opportunity for genuine human connection during one of the most challenging experiences anyone could face. When Jessica mentioned that she had always dreamed of dancing with Elvis, he immediately stood up and extended his hand to her. The medical staff initially hesitated, concerned about Jessica's fragile condition and the various tubes and monitors attached to her body. However, Dr. Chen, who had been observing the interaction, gave her approval for Jessica to stand if she felt able to do so. What happened next would be remembered by everyone present as one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking moments they had ever witnessed. Jessica, despite her weakness and the pain medication she was receiving, managed to stand with Elvis's support. He held her gently, mindful of her fragility, and began to slowly sway to an imaginary melody while humming "Love Me Tender" in her ear. The dance between Elvis and Jessica lasted only a few minutes, but its impact on everyone present was profound and lasting. Jessica, who had been in considerable pain and discomfort for days, seemed to find a sense of peace and comfort in those moments that surprised her medical team. Her vital signs, which had been erratic and concerning, stabilized during her time with Elvis, and her pain levels appeared to decrease significantly. Dr. Chen, who had been treating pediatric cancer patients for over 15 years, later described witnessing something during Elvis's visit that she had never seen before in her medical career. Jessica's response to Elvis's presence went beyond typical improvements in mood or spirits that sometimes occurred when patients received special visitors. There seemed to be a genuine physiological change in her condition, as if the emotional and spiritual comfort she was receiving was having measurable effects on her body's functioning. After their dance, Elvis sat beside Jessica's bed and, at her request, sang several of her favorite songs in a soft, intimate style that was completely different from his usual concert performances. He sang "Love Me Tender," "Are You Lonesome Tonight," and "It's Now or Never," with a tenderness and emotion that brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the room, including Jessica's parents and the medical staff who had gathered to witness this unprecedented visit. Throughout the evening, Elvis demonstrated a remarkable intuition about Jessica's needs and comfort levels. When she became tired, he encouraged her to rest while he continued singing softly. When she wanted to talk, he listened with complete attention to her thoughts about life, death, and the meaning she had found in music during her illness. When she expressed concern about her parents and how they would cope with her death, Elvis offered words of comfort and reassurance that seemed to provide genuine peace. The most remarkable aspect of Elvis's visit was the length of time he stayed with Jessica and her family. He had arrived at the hospital shortly before midnight, and he remained in room 314 until nearly 3 in the morning, far longer than anyone had expected or requested. He seemed to understand that this was not just a brief meet-and-greet opportunity, but potentially the most important hours of a young woman's life. During those 3 hours, Elvis created what Jessica's family later described as a sacred space around their daughter's hospital bed. His presence seemed to transform the clinical environment of the hospital room into something more peaceful and meaningful. The constant beeping of medical monitors faded into the background as Elvis's voice filled the room with music that spoke to the deepest parts of the human experience: love, loss, hope, and the connections that transcend physical existence. Near the end of his visit, Elvis made a promise to Jessica that revealed the depth of his emotional investment in her well-being. He told her that he would remember her always, that her courage and grace in the face of terminal illness had inspired him, and that he would carry her spirit with him in every performance for the rest of his career. He also assured her that her parents would be taken care of, though he didn't elaborate on what specific arrangements he was planning to make. Elvis's departure from St. Jude Hospital in the early morning hours of November 9th marked the beginning of what medical staff would later describe as the most peaceful final day they had ever witnessed for a terminally ill patient. Jessica's condition remained stable throughout the morning, and she appeared to be experiencing significantly less pain and discomfort than she had in the previous weeks. Dr. Chen noted in Jessica's medical records that her patient's vital signs had remained remarkably stable since Elvis's visit, and that Jessica seemed to have found a sense of acceptance and peace that had been absent during her final weeks of treatment. The teenager spent the morning talking quietly with her parents, sharing memories of happier times and expressing gratitude for the love and support they had provided throughout her illness. Jessica's nurse, Patricia Williams, who had been caring for her throughout her final hospitalization, observed that Jessica seemed different after Elvis's visit, not physically stronger necessarily, but emotionally and spiritually more peaceful. Jessica spoke repeatedly about her time with Elvis, describing it as the most beautiful experience of her life, and expressing amazement that her childhood hero had been so kind and genuine in their interaction. Throughout the day, Jessica received visits from other family members and friends who wanted to say goodbye. She spoke to each of them about meeting Elvis, describing not just the excitement of the encounter, but the profound sense of love and acceptance she had felt during their time together. Her descriptions of Elvis's compassion and gentleness provided comfort to her loved ones, who could see that Jessica had found something precious in her final hours. As evening approached, Jessica's condition began to decline in the gentle, gradual way that often characterizes the final stages of terminal illness. Her breathing became more shallow, her periods of consciousness became shorter, and her body began the process of shutting down. However, rather than the distress and struggle that often accompanies these final stages, Jessica appeared to be experiencing a peaceful transition that surprised and comforted her medical team. Dr. Chen remained with the Thompson family throughout Jessica's final hours, monitoring her condition and providing support to her parents. She later noted that Jessica's death was one of the most peaceful she had witnessed in her career, characterized by an absence of pain or struggle that was remarkable given the aggressive nature of her cancer and the difficulties she had experienced in previous weeks. Jessica Marie Thompson passed away peacefully at 6:47 a.m. on November 10, 1976, surrounded by her parents and medical team. Her final hours had been marked by the kind of serenity and grace that medical professionals rarely see in pediatric oncology, and everyone present attributed this peaceful transition to the profound impact of Elvis's visit 2 days earlier. The story of Elvis's visit to Jessica Thompson became a turning point in how St. Jude Hospital approached end-of-life care for their youngest patients, demonstrating the powerful role that emotional and spiritual support could play in providing comfort during terminal illness. Dr. Chen began advocating for more comprehensive approaches to pediatric palliative care that included music therapy, celebrity visits when possible, and greater attention to the emotional needs of dying children. Elvis's own response to Jessica's death was profound and lasting. Joe Esposito later revealed that Elvis was deeply affected by his experience with Jessica, speaking about her courage and grace frequently in the months that followed. Elvis also made substantial financial contributions to St. Jude Hospital, though he requested that these donations remain anonymous during his lifetime. The nursing staff at St. Jude began referring to what they had witnessed during Elvis's visit as evidence of a healing presence, the ability of certain individuals to provide comfort and peace that went beyond normal emotional support. Patricia Williams, Jessica's primary nurse, noted that other patients in the pediatric oncology ward had reported feeling calmer and more hopeful after learning about Elvis's visit, as if his compassion had created a positive energy that extended beyond Jessica's individual room. The Thompson family found healing in sharing Jessica's story with other families facing similar challenges. They became advocates for music therapy programs in children's hospitals and worked to establish a foundation that would provide musical experiences for terminally ill children. The Jessica Thompson Foundation, established 6 months after her death, has since facilitated hundreds of special musical encounters between sick children and their favorite performers. Elvis incorporated his experience with Jessica into his understanding of his role as an entertainer and public figure. He began making more frequent visits to hospitals and charitable organizations, often without publicity or media coverage. His approach to these visits was influenced by what he had learned during his time with Jessica, the importance of genuine connection, patient listening, and providing hope and comfort rather than just entertainment. The medical community took notice of the documented effects of Elvis's visit on Jessica's final days. Several research studies were initiated to investigate the physiological effects of music and emotional support on terminally ill patients. The Elvis effect, as some researchers began calling it, became a subject of study in medical schools and hospitals around the country. The story of Elvis and Jessica Thompson continues to influence medical practice, celebrity philanthropy, and public understanding of the role that compassion can play in healing more than 40 years after that November night at St. Jude Hospital. The documented effects of Elvis's visit on Jessica's final days contributed to research that has improved end-of-life care for countless patients. Medical professionals now recognize the importance of addressing not just the physical symptoms of terminal illness, but also the emotional and spiritual needs of patients and their families. Music therapy has become a standard component of pediatric palliative care programs, and many hospitals have established protocols for facilitating meaningful encounters between patients and their heroes or role models. The nursing staff who witnessed Elvis's interaction with Jessica went on to become advocates for more humane and holistic approaches to terminal care. Patricia Williams eventually became the director of palliative care at St. Jude Hospital, implementing programs that were directly inspired by what she observed during Elvis's visit. Her work has influenced similar programs at children's hospitals across the country. Elvis himself was changed by his experience with Jessica in ways that influenced the remaining months of his life. Friends and family members noted that he spoke frequently about the courage of sick children and the responsibility that famous people have to use their influence for compassionate purposes. His final concerts included dedications to Jessica and other young fans who had faced serious illnesses. The Jessica Thompson Foundation has grown into a national organization that provides musical experiences, therapeutic support, and end-of-life comfort to thousands of terminally ill children each year. The Foundation's work is based on the principle that Elvis demonstrated during his visit with Jessica, that genuine human connection and compassionate presence can provide healing that goes beyond medical intervention. Research into the physiological effects of music and emotional support on terminally ill patients has advanced significantly since Jessica's case was first documented. Studies have shown measurable improvements in pain management, anxiety reduction, and overall quality of life when patients receive the kind of compassionate attention that Elvis provided to Jessica. Today, Room 314 at St. Jude Hospital contains a small plaque commemorating Jessica Thompson and Elvis Presley's visit. The plaque reads, "In memory of Jessica Marie Thompson and in recognition of the healing power of love, music, and human compassion." Medical students, nursing students, and healthcare professionals from around the world visit the room as part of their training in palliative care and patient advocacy. The story continues to inspire celebrities, musicians, and public figures to use their platforms for compassionate purposes. Many performers cite Elvis's example with Jessica as motivation for their own charitable work, understanding that their fame can provide comfort and hope to people facing life's greatest challenges. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone's compassion had a transformative effect on another person's suffering? Jessica's story reminds us that the most powerful healing sometimes comes not from medical intervention, but from genuine human connection and love. The encounter between Elvis and Jessica Thompson represents more than just a kind gesture from a celebrity to a fan. It demonstrates the profound impact that compassionate presence can have during life's most difficult moments, and it shows us that true healing involves addressing not just physical symptoms, but the deeper human needs for connection, understanding, and love. If this incredible story of compassion and healing moved you, please subscribe for more amazing tales about the moments when entertainment became something much more meaningful. Hit that notification bell and share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of the healing power of human kindness.